Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Once again, it's good to be together. It's really a kind of an island of normalcy in this abnormal world that we're finding, and that's really nice. From where I sit and because of what I think about and what I do, I have found that over these weeks, some of the most important and profound religious questions continue to bubble up inside of me. And some of the most significant questions about who we are and what we do are disturbing and also leading to a great deal of thought and some more reading, and with an attempt to understand a little bit deeper. So I found myself speaking about certain things that I feel I will also be talking about again come the high holidays, because they are of great importance. And one of the things that I was thinking about this week is that in a very real way, we, the Jewish people, live through our imagination. Through our books and through our rituals, we have ways of establishing or ways of transcending reality. Or in fact, we allow them to create their own reality. A very simple example of this is Shabbat. Who is to say that this day is really different than other days, or that we should keep a day aside and make it special and make it different? But we say it. Our tradition tells us to do it. And so we do create our own separate reality. And through Shabbat, then, we can have, as Heschel so famously said, this sanctuary in time. We've created this. And I know that we can all look at ourselves and see how it has worked for us, this sanctuary in time on these very difficult days, even as we approach each other virtually. We look forward to this day. I know I do, and I hear from many others, for us to be able to come together as a community. How special these hours are, and how we comfort each other in this tradition, in the Siddur, in the music, and in the word, in the Torah, and in its words. Historically, the Jewish people also did it with the Beit Midrash. For they went into the Beit Midrash and they entered into a different world, a different language. And conversations from centuries ago became very real at the moment. And there we entered into different concerns than what was going on in the world around us. We continue to do that often through our learning. Think about this. Pages and pages, tomes are written about a sacrificial system and a priesthood from a time that no longer exists. And then for generations, we continue to learn about it and continue to speak about it as we think about it, and we continue to try find meaning in it. There have been moments in history where great changes have taken place. We all know that. There have been moments which have represented turning points. And in those difficult times and often crises, we've continued to create a narrative from the past that helps protect us from some of our challenges. But during the moments of great change and crisis, we also realize that we've had to redefine ourselves. Who are we? What do we do as Jews in a new reality? What does the tradition demand of us now? What can we imagine? For some thinkers and some religious leaders, these ideas that we have transformed and experienced radical change can't be seen as being true. In fact, often they are seen as being reprehensible or distasteful, because there's a voice in tradition that says what was is, and what is will always be. They view what we do or what our ancestors do going back for millennium as having to be consistent and the same. But that's not true. Jewish life has invented and reinvented itself throughout the ages. And I believe that that capacity is one of the keys to our resilience. But we balance that with a sense of tradition. So why do we do it? Well, in the simplest way, we could say what Tevye said: tradition. Through destructions and exiles and epidemics in the past, they've all had profound influence on our psyche and the reality of our being. Our capacity to either interact with the outside world or refrain from any interaction with the outside world, sometimes because it was imposed on us and we were separated, but sometimes we've chosen to separate ourselves, as we see in our own generation. But that's had a great impact on our sense of our own reality. So I thought about this for a number of reasons. One is that at this time with the epidemic and the extraordinary social upheaval that's taking place, not just in this country, but all around the world, we can go into a cocoon. We can close ourselves off, and we can say business goes on as usual. Or we can realize that inevitably these times are going to change us. Simply look around at the screen. We're doing something we would not have previously dreamed about doing. But the changes, I believe, are going to be much more profound than what we see on this screen. It is going to have to do with our relationship with technology and how technology is going to be used for our messaging, more than our messaging, communication, which is a little bit deeper. And it's going to have to do with our relationships with other human beings and the impact that this has on relationships. For some, it will be about turning inward. It will be about creating a community with bigger walls because of fear of change and fear of the other. But for others, it's going to be about the necessity for the interconnectedness between ourselves, with other communities, and with other people. One of the lessons of this virus right now is that all human beings are susceptible and vulnerable in the same way. There are things that connect us all. So where do we place ourselves in the important questions that take place in our society? Where do we place ourselves as individuals, as a community, as a people, with the issues of racism, inequality, and poverty? I don't pretend to have the answers, but these are the questions that we are asking. And I am one who believes that crisis can be difficult, but my experiences have shown me, both personally and communally, that crises can lead to new ways of seeing the world, new ways to do things, and the possibility of remaking ourselves in very profound ways, holding on to our most essential values. This week, we read, as you've heard last night and this morning, we read Parashat Korach, and we read about the rebellion against Moses by Korach, Datan, Aviram, and On. They challenged Moses' leadership. And traditionally, and as you heard, the rebellion was seen not only as an act of defiance against God, against Moses and Moses' leadership, but it was a rejection of the inherited law given by God. And many of the Meforshim see it as a rejection of God himself. So almost all the traditional Meforshim think of Korach, the way he's presented in the narrative, as a very, very negative force. He's seen as egotistical, and he's seen as a danger to the structure of the community that Moses was trying to build. In modernity, though, Korach was at times viewed as somebody who was a man of the people in a way that one has to look at it. That is, he made an attempt to democratize the community, and he rebelled against a system whereby nepotism and power reigned and reigned for generations. Viewing Korach as a positive force was one of the reasons that the great thinker and philosopher of the 17th century, Baruch Spinoza, was put into harem. He was executed. In his trial, he responded to questions about Korach in the following way. he recalled the following. He said, the special place that was reserved for the Kohanim and the Levim in our tradition was a function of what had happened in the desert experience around the golden calf. At that time, the Levim did not participate in its worship. And so they were given a unique place amongst our people. They were given entry and the privileges of the worship service, but no one else was. Other people, the average person, most of the people were left out of worship. And so Spinoza saw what Korach was doing as an attempt at a corrective to what had happened. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever the reality is, the authors of the text never saw it that way. But the result was the following, and now I'm not talking about Korach, but Spinoza. Because he presented a different viewpoint, ultimately, he was put in cherem, he was excommunicated. He was excommunicated because of his ideas. He was a threat to the existing structure in 17th century European Jewry. And I bring this up not just because of Korach and not because of Spinoza's interpretation, but rather because of his capacity to look at a text through a different lens. Spinoza was highly influenced by thinkers from the outside, by philosophers going back to the great Greek philosophers and his contemporary philosophers. And Spinoza was part of the Enlightenment. As a result, the rabbinic authorities in his day and the establishment of his day excommunicated him. And yet you probably could not tell me of another thinker as great as Spinoza from that period of Jewish history. He made a profound impact. For him, Judaism had to be rational. Judaism had to be reasonable. Judaism had to create meaning for human beings. And that was core for Spinoza. And I raise this because of the narrative because of the narrative in the Torah, because of the interpretations of the narrative, but also because it's touching on a particular sensitivity that I am feeling right now toward those who see themselves as being the most religious, the most fundamental, the majority of the people who speak in the name of God. And we find them around ourselves. And I'm not speaking specifically about Jews. I'm speaking about different people in our culture and different religions. If one thinks that one can speak in the name of God with certainty, one lacks the reason or rational dimension of living in a world that aspires for truth. Around us, we have seen people endangering not only their own lives and the lives of the people close to them, and the lives of their communities, and the lives of this nation, and our lives. We've seen charlatan evangelical leaders talk about double ionic air filters keeping people safe at rallies. We've seen people talk about prayer as the antidote to the virus. We've seen people say that God does not want us to wear masks because it either takes away from human freedom or because he breathed the breath of life into Adam. At first, when I heard these people, I thought it was a joke. But then I realized how very dangerous they are. And my sense of their danger is not only in terms of the damage that's done by those people who listen to them, but the danger is also because they can destroy the profound positive influence that religion can have on society and should have on society. They make it stupid, and it's unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. Wearing a mask or not wearing a mask is not a sign of one's political affiliation. It is a sign of one's intelligence. Without oversimplifying, religion should be a force that brings people together and does not tear them apart. Religion should be the force that informs life and all the knowledge and learning that helps us understand life. Religion should be a force that fights for the essential values established, in our case, through our tradition: freedom, justice, truth. Truth. humility, and patience. It is our religious inclination that should make us reject the leaders who lie. Our religious tradition demands that we learn in the evolution of our thinking, that we realize that we haven't always seen the world through the same lens, but over time we've grown to understand more and more. What we know about the world right now is not what we're going to know about the world tomorrow. And it's not what we knew about the world yesterday. And so we have to write a different narrative for this moment. It's meant to invite both the personal and the spiritual, but it must be rational, it must be honest, and it must be true. It's the narrative that says religion is about strengthening community because people need community. Individuals need to live in community. Religion is about taking responsibility for ourselves and understanding our responsibility for other people. It's about reaching out. It's about helping where we can help and also understanding human limitation. Although the biblical narrative may speak of a plague as being the work of God, our job as readers may be to learn how to interpret that. And we realize the vast literature that pushes back against fundamental concepts such as that, beginning with the Bible itself and continuing through the prophets, the rabbis, the great thinkers throughout time. I don't know fully what's going to come out of this and what the new narrative about religion will be, but I know it's going to take us beyond the intensity of our particularism or anyone's particularism, enable us to assimilate in a better and a more profound way greater universal ideals and values. We live after the Enlightenment, and that made a difference, all the difference in the world in Jewish understanding, and how easily it is for groups, for people to fall back into pre-Enlightenment thought. We'll see ourselves as a people in this world with our own unique history. We will never forget our suffering, but also a grand history of extraordinary success and contribution. We will understand there are many others who suffer in this world. We're not the only people who have suffered, and many others who can contribute in great ways to this world, and so we have to listen to others. There's a great thirst to understand more, to connect to, and to protect the natural world, to reach out to those who are suffering and left out. And I also know for us, this can be done within a particular brilliant Jewish framework. It begins on a day like today, when we imagine that we can make time holy. You know the conversation that says, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, if it smells like a duck, it's probably a duck. I think we're going to use that conversation in another way. If it connects to all of humanity, if it connects to the world of nature, if it connects to the most significant values we know, then it is religion and it is Judaism. In our limited lifetime, we've seen people commit the worst atrocities in the name of religion and in the name of God. If it's not about preserving life, if it doesn't unite people, if it doesn't take responsibility for neighbors, if it's not the religion that we need for this day or for the future. The power that unites us is the essential force of life, demanding learning and respecting truth and leading to appreciation, responsibility, and care for each other. Shabbat Shalom.